Would the old rules bring better fights to the modern UFC? That's a great question. And the answer to that is based on what you define as better fights. The modern MMA rules are designed specifically to see more visually appealing fights. They are created to have more striking, to have more knockouts, to have less ground fighting, to have less grinding. They're specifically made to have more of a fast-paced fight. That's what they're made for, because that's appealing to watch, that's interesting, that's amazing. That's what these rules are for. The old rules, you would see better fights based on more realistic. That's what's better for me. The modern MMA rules are much closer to a sport, a bit further away from an actual real fight. So if you had the old rules, you would see much more fights that would be boring to watch. The fights would be better because it would be raw. It would be like down to earth. It would be very realistic. It would be the ultimate fighting championship. As it's in the name, it would be that. But some fights would be 1.5 hours of endless grinding. It would be 2 hours of somebody laying on top of another. None of them move more than a couple inches at a time. Fighters grinding each other down until one can't move no more. So there would be some very incredibly quick fights. There would be more quick knockouts, and there would be more fights lasting half an hour or even more. Helio Gracie versus Valdemar Santana was the longest fight in registered MMA history, 3 hours and 45 minutes. Who would watch that? I wouldn't. I've never watched that fight. I never even watched Sakuraba versus Royce Gracie. It's like 90 minutes. I'm not watching that, I'm not watching that. I'm barely even watching a 12 rounds pro boxing fight because it's too long for me. I'm watching judo. It's like 2 minutes. That's it. My attention span is like a goldfish. So yeah, the fights would be better from a fighter's perspective, from a purist perspective. But from somebody who's watching fights, from the audience perspective, from the betting perspective, from the money perspective, it just wouldn't be as interesting. Much, as I said, the fights would be much more boring many times.